grassroots organizations we're coming together, but we just don't get the response that we should
from the community. And why do you think that is?
We allegedly we live in one of the most affluent counties in the country, and supposed to be the well-educated and the well financially. And sometimes I think we tend to look the other way, and we're satisfied with what we see. I know one person, 34-year-old young man, has his PhD, and so we said, well, let's do a letter of no confidence in the chief, and we'll send it to the county exec to ask her to review and maybe possibly remove him or replace him because he's not following 21st century policing. Which, I was over at the White House with Obama when they started that down in Florida with IECP. And the guy looked at me and said, well, we got to worry about his HR rights. I said, his HR rights? I said, he's an appointed official. I said, he works at the pleasure of the county exec or the mayor. And we don't need it. Well, he may want to come back and sue us. I said, I can't worry about that. If he's not practicing and creating a culture to eliminate that racial tension, he's been there since 2016. He had 4 years to make the changes. And the only thing we just keep getting is, I'm sorry. So at what point do you stop saying you're sorry?
Sure. Well, and again, as we look at things that are happening around the country, and Prince George's County is no different from any other agency, of course, that they're going, just the nature of what officers do, they're going to be unfortunate situations. Now, it appears that in the case there, that there is a degree of goodwill in the bank that and that's always a good thing when you have the ability to talk to folks and try to work things out. Now, of course, there are those concerns when you take that and you then add up all the other events that are happening across the country, particularly when we're talking about this whole situation with George Floyd and that level of intensity. And let me ask you this: were you surprised by the intensity of the protest? I mean, every time you looked up, there were and people were protesting in Four Corners, Arkansas, and Chicago, and Los Angeles, and Miami. Were you surprised with the intensity and the fact that there were protests in all 50 states?
No, I really wasn't surprised because the community is tired, and this was the right opportunity. I say again, it was a perfect storm to get the community motivated. But more important, it got all communities involved, whether it was white, black, Jewish, Islam. Everybody started justice. Then when it went global,
sure,
as far as Australia, okay, that says that there's a problem globally, and they need to look at the systemic racism,
sure,
and how, because everybody talk about the wealth in this country, how they got the wealth. Well, anybody can develop wealth if you have free labor for 300, 400 years. You and then they want you to catch up. And in the 1968 March, the Pueblo March, it was for what? Job, justice, and no more war. For,
sure.
Dr. King started
sure.
the Vietnam War. And the same thing is true here. What do we want? We want jobs. We want to be treated fairly. If you got a school system that pays per pupil $18, you got another one that pays $35. That's the disparity, and people see that.
Well,
it should
sure.
be evenly across the board.
Right.
But when you look at the police department, you should have no problem in getting rid of a bad police officer.
Well, and that was one of the things that have come up, across the country now. Minneapolis, their city council is really going hardcore in terms of, they're talking about the funding and they're looking at eliminating their police department in some shape or form. We'll have to see how that plays out. Now, one of the things that was a concern initially was the time that it took to prosecute the folk. Now, I've seen, again, I'm going to go back to Prince George's County, that the state's attorney there has no issues with bringing people in front of the courts and doing what she has to do.
Correct.
Yes, I mean, she's been very aggressive about that. That has not been the case countrywide, however. And so, I mean, if you look at the way that Freddie Gray, they led allegations against those officers, that case kind of went south on the state's attorney. Now, she didn't have video in that case, of course, but if you look at the Michael Brown prosecution and other places. So with that being said, were you concerned initially when you saw that the other 3 officers had not been charged, and also the initial charge that was placed against the officer that had his knee in the neck of Mr. Floyd?
Absolutely. How can you stand around and just watch? It's coming out now that they were rookies. But as a human being, how could you stand? Because you could tell that something was going wrong. All right. So they have responsibility. A human life is so important. You can never get it back. So you can never get it back. Once it's gone, it's gone. So they had a responsibility. But I guess they thought the code of blue was going to protect them. This officer had, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 18 different offenses that he had in the past. He should not have been on the force. And that's why we're in favor of creating, I'm not going to say a blacklist, but a list, like a sex offender list of bad officers. Mm-hmm. Keanu Johnson here in the county with life after release last year was fighting to get that done. And it fell on deaf ears. Our elected officials didn't think that was important. But now, if he was on that list, this officer was on that list, or even this officer, Carter, that killed the guy in the car, because he had like 5 or 6 prior. If he was on the list, he would not have been on the force.
Sure. Now, let me ask your opinion. Now, you hear the talk that's going on across the country about defunding, and some politicians have even gone as far as saying we want to eliminate certain police departments. What are your thoughts on defunding and eliminating certain departments around the country?
No fault for okie doke. The defunding issue really is an issue about reallocation of funds. Uh-huh. How someone had framed that and use it to say that we want to get rid of the police. No, that's not what we're saying. The money can be spent differently. So they need to take that word defunding all out. In opposite, they sort of maybe went going a little bit too far. But I think what that's about is to get their attention. Because one of the obstacles that they have is the union. Okay, unions protect their officers. There's 18 states that got what they call the Police Bill of Rights. This guy, this in Maryland, he gets 10 days. He don't have to say a word. He just lawyers up, and then they come out. And then you have, so we can work on some of the union contracts, not touch the salary. The salary can stay the same, the picture can stay the same, but some of that disciplinary policy need to change. And I think the union could play a better role at helping to eliminate the problem instead of trying to protect. Because most time with union, it's usually only about 10% or 50% of the employees that constantly get in trouble. The other 95 or 85% never get in trouble in their whole career.
So now your concern with the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights, or the LEOBR, is primarily around administrative processes, or what are your exact concerns with that?
Our concern with that is real simple. You're giving them some additional law of protection that they shouldn't have. And if they take 10 days before they can speak about what happened, and they lawyer up, then they can get the stories together and change it of the incident. The other thing that concern us is the grand jury, for example. A lot of cases don't even need to go to the grand jury, but they take it and send them to the grand jury, where the prosecutor or the state attorney could directly charge those people. So I think we just got to get a little more savvy about how we handle it, but it got to be a collective effort.
So
people are sick and tired, and sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Sure.
But I think this is a golden opportunity to bring the community together and really address the issue. But it's more than just police. It's education. It's healthcare.
Right.
It's more than that. It's jobs. It's economic development. We still can't go to the bank and get money. Housing is another big one that we're getting ready to take on, because after they lift the ban on the foreclosure and the rental, we're gonna have people that may be homeless. Okay, sure. Because the landlord then would have 30 days to evict them, and you're gonna see a lot of people that's gonna start being evicted. So we are preparing to do that. But if they're not gonna possibly put more crime back on the street. So it's a lot of issues that have to be met, and we got to talk about them together and not separately. And one of the things that I tell folks, all organizations, it's time that we put this, dividing ourselves down and acting like we crabs in a basket. And organizations sometimes tend to do the way they're black and white organizations. Sometimes we act like we crab in a basket and we just fighting for our own share, where we work collectively together, we can benefit the whole community.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you. There are a host of issues that create despair, and we could cover the whole socioeconomic gamut from A to Z, and I certainly agree with that. I did want to know, what is your relationship with law enforcement locally? Because one of the things that was coming up were relationships, and I heard you mention that. And we've heard that from folks in Minneapolis and Los Angeles and here where I am in Nevada. What is the relationship that you have in Prince George's County with public safety and the prosecutor's office and so forth?
We have a pretty good reputation. One of our unique problems is that we have, not only do we have the Prince George's County Police Department there, but we have 27 municipalities that have their own police department, such as Greenbelt, Laurel, and them. Mm-hmm. And so we have to separate out, when there's an incident, the first question we ask, which agency was it?
Sure. So what relationship do you have with
Georgia?
Sure.
So we said, well, what color was the car? So the car is green and white. Well, that tells me that's a Greenbelt car. Yeah. Okay. So we have to go through that rigmarole to figure it out, then get the right agency. And that's where part of the problem is, because what happened, how to handle a problem in Greenbelt may not be the way that the Prince George's County Police Department have it. The other thing that we do, on the third Tuesday of each month, all the agencies come together. We started attending those meetings in 2010, and they want to know why the NAACP was coming to their meeting, because that was the only time that we got a chance to see all 27 of them in one location and one spot. So
do you, with the, and understand, Prince George's County has more municipal agencies than anywhere else in the state. So do you have good relationships with those agencies? Oh yeah. And the vast majority we do. We have some we got some rocky relationship with, but Laurel, for example, we got a great relationship with. We actually brought in the DOJ into Laurel, and we did some great work there. And sure. Craig, the mayor of Laurel, he said, I'll be a lifetime member of the NAACP. And he calls me up, invites me up for lunch. And we walk around through the community. Because one of the things that we told them when we went into Laurel, that we will be here for about 90 to 120 days. This is your problem,
You have to resolve your issue. We just want to give you some tools